There are moments in life when the loudest voice you hear isn't the world outside, but the one echoing inside your own mind. That voice of doubt, that whisper of shame, that constant reminder of every flaw, mistake, or wound you've carried. And yet, let me tell you this today, you are bigger than what is bothering you inside. Courage is not about never feeling afraid or never stumbling. Courage begins with telling your story, even when your voice shakes. It's when you look at the pain that has been weighing on your heart and say, I'm not going to silence you anymore. I will face you. The truth is, when you share your story, you don't just free yourself. You give others permission to free themselves too. And here's the part many of us struggle with: vulnerability. We've been taught that to be vulnerable is to be weak. But nothing could be further from the truth. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the birthplace of strength. Think about it. It takes more courage to open up about your wounds than it does to hide them. Every time you let yourself be seen, scars and all, you show the world what real bravery looks like. Shame thrives in secrecy. It grows in the dark like mold. But when we speak it, when we dare to say, this is what I've carried, this is what I've felt, shame loses its power. You are not defined by your failures, your struggles, or even your darkest days. You are defined by your resilience, by your refusal to give up, and by the light that remains in you, even when the world feels heavy. So hear this truth: your worth is not tied to perfection. It's tied to your humanity. You don't have to earn your value, it already exists in you. Every stumble, every scar, every tear only deepens the story of who you are, and it makes you even more capable of love, of empathy, of connection. Finally, healing doesn't come from criticism or judgment, especially the kind you aim at yourself. Healing happens when you choose compassion over criticism. Imagine if you spoke to yourself the way you speak to the people you love most. Imagine if you treated yourself as someone worthy of patience, kindness, and forgiveness. Because you are. So today, whatever is bothering you inside, the guilt, the fear, the shame, the anxiety, remember this: it does not define you. It does not own you. And it is not bigger than you. You are more powerful, more resilient, and more capable than you realize. Stand tall, open your heart, and choose compassion for yourself. Because you, my friend, are so much bigger than what's been bothering you inside. Courage begins with telling your story, even when your voice shakes. That statement is simple, but it is also one of the hardest truths to practice in real life. Because telling your story means pulling back the curtain on who you really are. The pain, the joy, the regrets, the failures, the love, the loss, and everything in between. And it is so much easier to stay quiet, to keep things hidden where nobody can judge them, where nobody can misunderstand them, where nobody can use them against you. But here's the reality: silence is heavy. Carrying your story locked inside feels like dragging chains around your soul. It eats away at you, bit by bit, until you start to believe that your silence is protecting you, when in fact it is only suffocating you. That is why courage begins not with perfection, not with having all the answers, not with always being strong, but with the shaky, trembling decision to open your mouth and speak your truth. When your voice shakes, it means your story matters. It means what you are about to share is tied to something deep inside you, something that has shaped you. The tremor is not weakness. It's proof that you are touching the raw edge of your humanity. We live in a world that teaches us to toughen up, to hide what hurts, to armor ourselves so no one sees the cracks. But the paradox is this: the armor doesn't make us safer, it makes us lonelier. And loneliness is far more dangerous to the human heart than vulnerability ever will be. Courageous storytelling is the bridge that connects us to others, because it's only when you tell the truth of your life that people can actually know you, not the version you pretend to be. Think about the people who have inspired you most. Chances are, it wasn't their perfection that moved you. It was their honesty. It was the moment they admitted they were afraid, or the moment they shared the battle they fought, or the time they said, "I struggled, but I found my way." Those moments stick with us because they remind us we are not alone. That is the quiet power of courage. It doesn't just free the one who speaks, it frees everyone who listens. Your story, even told with shaking hands and a trembling voice, becomes a lifeline to someone else who thought they were drowning alone. Of course, fear is always the first gatekeeper. Fear whispers. If you tell them, they'll judge you. They'll think less of you. They'll leave you. And sometimes that's true, because not everyone is ready to handle your truth. But courage is not about controlling how others respond. It's about refusing to let fear control your own voice. Your story is not up for approval. It does not need a round of applause to be valid. It is yours, and it matters simply because it is real. The shaking voice, the stumbles, the tears, all of those are signs that you are doing something brave. They are not evidence of weakness, but evidence of strength. There is something sacred about the moment you tell the truth out loud for the first time. It's like breaking chains. It's like opening a window in a dark, airless room. Suddenly there is space to breathe again. Shame thrives in silence. It grows when you hide it away. But shame cannot survive being spoken. The moment you bring it into the light, it starts to lose its grip. That is why telling your story is so essential. Not just the beautiful parts, but the hard parts too. Especially the hard parts. Because those are the pieces that remind you of the strength it took to survive, the lessons you learned, the resilience you built. And maybe you're thinking, but what if my story isn't finished? What if I'm still in the middle of it? Still hurting? Still lost? That's okay. You don't have to wait for a perfect ending to share the truth of where you are. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the unfinished ones, because they carry raw honesty. Saying, "I don't have it all figured out, but here I am," can be more inspiring than a neat, polished tale with a tidy resolution. The world doesn't need more perfect narratives. It needs more real ones. When your voice shakes, lean into it. Let it remind you that you are human. Let it remind you that this moment matters. Too often we think courage feels like a roaring lion, like fire in the veins, like boldness without fear. But most of the time, courage is quieter. It's the phone call you finally make after months of avoidance. It's the sentence you finally say after years of silence. It's the tears you let fall in front of someone you trust. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else is more important than fear. And nothing is more important than living in truth. Your story is not just about you. That might be the most beautiful part. You never know who needs to hear what you have lived through. You never know who is waiting for a sign that they're not the only one. Maybe your story will save someone from giving up. Maybe it will give them the words they couldn't find. Maybe it will remind them of their own strength. That's why silencing yourself is not only a loss for you, but also for the world. Every time a voice trembles through its story, another person in the shadows finds the courage to speak too. The shaking voice, the raw confession, the honesty that spills out, that is where real courage lives. And here's the truth: the more you speak, the steadier your voice becomes. What trembles today becomes steady tomorrow. What feels unbearable to say today may become the very testimony that strengthens you tomorrow. You do not have to get it perfect. You just have to get it out. Courage begins with that first step, that first word, that first shaky moment of truth. So if your voice shakes, let it. If your hands tremble, let them. If your eyes fill with tears, let them fall. Because courage does not demand perfection. It only demands presence. Show up. Tell the story. Even if it's messy. Even if it's unfinished. Even if it scares you. Especially if it scares you. Because on the other side of fear is freedom. And the only way to reach it is to open your mouth and let your story live outside of you. You are not just the things that have happened to you. You are not just the wounds you've carried in silence. You are the one who has survived. You are the one who has endured. And you are the one who gets to choose whether your story stays locked inside or whether it becomes a light for someone else. That choice, to speak, to share, to reveal, will always be terrifying. But it will also always be worth it. Because courage begins with telling your story. Even when your voice shakes, and every time you do, you remind yourself and the world that you are still here, still standing, still brave enough to be seen. That is where healing begins. That is where connection begins. That is where freedom begins. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the birthplace of strength. This truth often feels upside down to us because we live in a culture that equates strength with control, certainty, power, and dominance, while labeling openness, emotion, and uncertainty as weakness. From childhood, many of us were taught to toughen up, to keep it together, to never let people see us cry or struggle. We were trained to wear masks, to put on armor, to build walls around our tenderest selves. And yet every time we hide behind those walls, we are not protecting our strength. We are imprisoning it. Real strength has never been about the armor we wear, but about the courage to lay it down. Vulnerability is not the absence of strength. It is the truest demonstration of it. Because when you are vulnerable, you are saying, I am willing to be seen. I am willing to be known. I am willing to risk the possibility of pain, because connection, love, and authenticity matter more to me than safety. That is strength in its purest form. Vulnerability is the place where growth is born. Think about the times in your life when you grew the most, when you stretched beyond what you thought you were capable of. Chances are, those were not times when you had everything under control. They were times when you felt exposed, uncertain, or deeply afraid. Maybe it was standing on a stage for the first time, pouring out your truth to strangers. Maybe it was confessing a mistake and risking disappointment. Maybe it was telling someone you loved them without knowing if they would love you back. Those moments carried the risk of rejection, the risk of failure, the risk of heartbreak. And yet, those are the moments that built your courage, expanded your heart, and reminded you of what it means to be fully alive. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the crucible of transformation. When you are vulnerable, you are showing the world your humanity. And humanity is not weakness. Humanity is the essence of connection. We long for connection, but connection cannot exist without vulnerability. To love is to be vulnerable. To create is to be vulnerable. To lead is to be vulnerable. To trust is to be vulnerable. Every meaningful human experience requires the willingness to be exposed in some way, to step into uncertainty, to risk something precious. When you shut down vulnerability, you don't just protect yourself from pain. You also close yourself off from joy, from intimacy, from creativity, from the very things that give life its deepest meaning. The lie that vulnerability is weakness comes from fear. Fear tells us that if we show who we really are, people will turn away. Fear whispers that if we admit we don't know everything, others will lose respect. Fear insists that if we let people see our flaws, they will stop loving us. But here is the truth. Pretending to be invincible does not inspire connection. It creates distance. No one relates to perfection. No one bonds with a mask. What draws people to you, what builds trust and intimacy, is your willingness to be authentic, to say, I don't have it all figured out, to admit, I need help, to share, this is where I struggle. That kind of honesty takes more strength than any mask ever could. Vulnerability is also the birthplace of courage. Courage is not about marching into battle without fear. Courage is walking into the arena of life with fear in your chest and choosing to show up anyway. Vulnerability is that moment right before the leap, the moment your heart pounds and your hands shake and your mind screams for you to turn back. And yet, you move forward. You step into the unknown. You let yourself be seen, heard, and felt. That is the very definition of bravery. If you are waiting until you no longer feel vulnerable before you act, you will wait forever. The only way to be courageous is to be vulnerable. Think about love. Love is the most courageous act we ever engage in because it requires total vulnerability. To love someone is to say, "Here is my heart. I trust you with it, even though you could break it." There is no guarantee of safety, and yet we choose love anyway. That is strength. Or think about leadership. The strongest leaders are not the ones who pretend to have all the answers. They are the ones who admit when they are wrong, who listen with openness, who are willing to learn from others. That willingness to be imperfect and to grow publicly, that is strength. Or think about creativity. Every time an artist, a writer, a musician, or a thinker shares their work with the world, they are vulnerable. They are opening themselves up to judgment, to criticism, to rejection. But without that vulnerability, no art, no innovation, no progress could exist. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the wellspring of everything that moves us forward as individuals and as a collective. Of course, vulnerability does not come without pain. Sometimes you will open yourself up and people will misunderstand you. Sometimes you will risk and you will fall. Sometimes you will love and you will lose. But avoiding vulnerability will not save you from pain. It will only rob you of the joy, the beauty, and the meaning that can coexist with pain. Pain is inevitable, but isolation is optional. Vulnerability is the bridge that allows us to carry our pain together instead of suffering in silence. Strength is not about never falling. It is about choosing to rise again after you fall. And rising requires vulnerability. To say, "I am hurting. I need help. I cannot do this alone," is one of the bravest things a person can do. It is far easier to pretend everything is fine, to keep smiling while you are crumbling inside. But that pretense does not heal you. What heals you is vulnerability. The moment you share your truth with someone safe, the moment you allow yourself to be comforted, the moment you admit that you are human and you need others, that is where true strength lives. We need to rewrite the definition of strength. Strength is not stoicism. Strength is not silence. Strength is not pretending you are untouched by life. Strength is the courage to be open in a world that tells you to stay closed. Strength is the decision to risk love, to risk honesty, to risk being fully alive, even though you know it may hurt. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of strength because it demands everything in you to choose authenticity over protection, connection over isolation, truth over appearances. And every time you choose vulnerability, you are not diminishing yourself. You are expanding. So the next time you feel the trembling in your chest, the uncertainty in your gut, the rawness that comes when you are about to reveal a piece of yourself, do not mistake it for weakness. That trembling is the sound of your courage rising. That rawness is the birthplace of your strength. Let yourself be seen. Let yourself be known. Let yourself risk being real. Because life is too short for masks, too short for walls, too short for a false version of strength. Real strength lives in vulnerability. And when you embrace it, you will discover a depth of connection, a resilience, and a power you never knew was possible. Shame loses its power when spoken, not hidden. This truth is one of the most liberating discoveries we can ever make. Yet it is also one of the most difficult to live out. Shame is a silent captor. It thrives in secrecy, feeding on the stories we refuse to tell, on the mistakes we bury deep, on the parts of ourselves we believe are too unworthy or too broken to be seen. It whispers that we are not enough, that we do not belong, that if anyone ever knew the full truth about us, we would be rejected or abandoned. Shame convinces us that silence is safety, that hiding will protect us. But in reality, silence is the oxygen that keeps shame alive, and hiding only deepens its hold on us. The act of speaking, bringing our truth into the open, is the very thing that robs shame of its strength. When you hide your story, shame becomes your shadow. It follows you into every room, into every conversation, into every relationship. It sits quietly at the back of your mind, shaping the way you see yourself and the way you interact with the world. You may smile on the outside, you may achieve and perform, but on the inside, shame whispers that it's all a facade, that if anyone looked too closely, they would see your flaws and turn away. This is the prison of secrecy. It's invisible to others, but it is suffocating to the soul. And yet, the moment you dare to speak, when you say out loud, "This is what I've been through, this is what I've carried, this is what I've believed about myself," you throw open the doors of that prison. Speaking is the key that unlocks the chains. Shame tells us we are alone, but the act of speaking reveals that we are not. The moment you share your story with someone safe, the moment you voice the pain you've kept buried, you discover that you are not the only one. You hear the words, "Me too," and suddenly the weight you've carried for years feels lighter. Shame thrives on isolation, but connection is its undoing. That is why speaking is so powerful. It brings us back into the circle of humanity, reminding us that imperfection is not exile, that struggle is not disqualification, that being human means being both strong and fragile, both flawed and worthy at the same time. It takes courage to speak your shame, because everything in you resists it. Your heart races, your hands shake, your mind fills with fear of judgment. But that trembling is not a sign that you should stay silent. It is a sign that you are standing on the edge of freedom. Because once you name shame, once you put it into words, its grip begins to weaken. The things we fear the most in the dark lose their terror in the light. Think of how a shadow seems large and threatening until you bring a light to it and see that it is small. That is what happens when you speak your shame. You realize it does not define you, it does not control you, and it is not as powerful as it once seemed. Shame also convinces us that we must carry it alone, but that is a lie. We were never meant to walk through life isolated, cut off from others. Human beings heal in connection, not in silence. When you speak your shame to someone who listens with compassion, you experience the healing power of empathy. Empathy says, "I hear you. I see you. I do not judge you. You are still worthy." And in that moment, the voice of shame loses its authority. You realize that the very thing you thought would make you unlovable is actually the thing that makes you relatable. Your honesty becomes a bridge, and your story becomes a gift, not just to you, but to others who needed to know they are not alone. Shame grows when it stays hidden, because silence allows it to create false narratives. It tells you lies about who you are and what you're worth. It tells you that your mistakes are your identity, that your failures are your destiny, that your scars are signs of weakness instead of survival. But when you speak your story, you reclaim the power to define it. You begin to say, "Yes, this happened. Yes, I've struggled. But it is not the sum of who I am." Speaking your truth is not about erasing the past. It is about reframing it. It is about acknowledging what is real without letting it control the rest of your life. Of course, not everyone deserves to hear your story. Speaking does not mean shouting it to the world without discernment. It means finding those safe, trustworthy people who can hold your truth with care, who will not weaponize your vulnerability, who will honor your courage. Shame loses its power when spoken in the presence of empathy, not in the presence of judgment. That is why we must choose wisely where we place our stories. But the important thing is that we place them somewhere, that we do not let them rot in silence inside us. The irony is that we admire vulnerability in others, yet fear it in ourselves. We find it beautiful when someone else is honest, when they share their struggles, when they admit their humanity. We call them brave, inspiring, real. But when it comes to ourselves, we fear that same vulnerability will make us unworthy. The truth is, the very thing that makes others inspiring, their willingness to speak shame, is the same thing that will make you inspiring when you do it. Vulnerability in you will feel terrifying, but to others, it will look like courage. Shame loses its power when spoken because speaking reclaims your voice. Shame thrives on silence, and silence robs you of agency. But when you speak, you are saying, I will no longer be defined by what I hide. I will no longer be silenced by fear. Every time you speak your truth, no matter how small, you are taking back ground from shame. You are choosing honesty over secrecy, light over darkness, freedom over captivity. And over time, those choices build resilience. They teach you that you can survive honesty, that you can survive being seen, that you can survive being known. And not just survive, but thrive. Imagine carrying a heavy stone in your pocket everywhere you go. It weighs you down, but you've carried it so long that you almost forget it's there. You just assume life is supposed to feel heavy. Then one day, you take the stone out and show it to someone you trust. They don't recoil. They don't reject you. They simply say, "Thank you for trusting me with this." And suddenly, the weight is no longer just yours. That is what happens when you speak your shame. The heaviness lessens, the burden shifts, and you begin to feel lighter. The truth is, silence never protects you. It only imprisons you. Speaking is what sets you free. Speaking is what reminds you that you are not alone, that you are not defined by your mistakes, that you are worthy of love and belonging exactly as you are. Shame loses its power when spoken, not hidden. So let your voice tremble if it must. Let the tears fall if they come. But let the words out. Say them. Name the thing you've been afraid to say. Because on the other side of silence is freedom, and on the other side of shame is the truth of your worth. And you deserve to live in that truth. Your worth is not tied to perfection, it's tied to your humanity. This truth may sound simple, but for many of us it is one of the hardest things to believe. From the time we are young, we are told, sometimes directly, sometimes in subtle ways, that being valuable means being flawless. We are praised for getting good grades, for looking a certain way, for achieving, for performing, for pleasing others. We learn to link our worth with our ability to measure up to standards that are often impossible. And over time, we begin to believe that unless we are perfect, we are not enough. But perfection is a lie. It is a moving target that no one ever reaches, and chasing it will only leave you exhausted, anxious, and disconnected from yourself. Your worth does not come from what you achieve, how well you perform, or how perfectly you present yourself to the world. Your worth comes from the simple, undeniable truth that you are human. There is beauty in imperfection because imperfection is what makes us real. The cracks, the flaws, the scars, they are not evidence of your unworthiness, but proof that you have lived, that you have felt deeply, that you have walked through struggles and come out the other side. Perfection isolates us because it creates an illusion that no one can relate to. Humanity connects us because it shows that we are all in this together. Think about the people you love most, the people who inspire you, the people who make you feel less alone. Chances are, it's not their perfection that draws you in. It's their honesty, their authenticity, their willingness to show up as they are. Their mistakes and their vulnerabilities don't make them less. They make them human. And being human is what makes them lovable. The same is true for you. We often act as though we must earn worthiness, as though it is a prize awarded only to those who do everything right. But worth is not a prize, it is your birthright. You were worthy the moment you were born, and nothing you achieve or fail at can ever change that. The problem is, We live in a world that rewards performance and punishes imperfection, so we internalize the belief that worth must be proven. We tell ourselves, when I lose the weight, then I'll be lovable. When I succeed, then I'll be enough. When I get it all together, then I'll finally deserve acceptance. But that is a trap. Because even if you reach one of those goals, the finish line just moves further away. You achieve one thing and immediately feel the pressure to achieve the next. You fix one flaw and suddenly see 10 more. It is endless, and it is empty. The only way to step out of that cycle is to stop tying your worth to perfection and start grounding it in your humanity. Your humanity means you will make mistakes. It means you will fall short. It means you will have days when you are messy, broken, uncertain, or afraid. And none of that diminishes your worth. In fact, it's in those moments of imperfection that your truest self shines through. When you admit you don't have all the answers, when you let others see your struggles, when you allow yourself to be real instead of perfect, you create genuine connection. And that connection matters far more than the appearance of flawlessness ever will. We do not fall in love with people because they are perfect. We fall in love with them because they are real. We respect leaders not because they never make mistakes, but because they have the courage to own their mistakes and grow from them. We trust friends not because they are flawless, but because they are honest, consistent, and authentic. Perfection does not inspire trust. Humanity does. When you tie your worth to perfection, you set yourself up for a lifetime of shame and self-criticism. Because no matter how hard you try, you will never meet the impossible standard of being flawless. And each time you fall short, shame will whisper, "See, you're not enough. You'll never be enough." But when you tie your worth to your humanity, you free yourself from that cycle. You begin to see mistakes not as proof of failure, but as opportunities for growth. You begin to understand that falling down is not the opposite of worthiness. It is part of being alive. And each time you rise again, you discover resilience you never knew you had. Your humanity also makes you empathetic. When you stop pretending to be perfect, you begin to see others more clearly. You stop judging them so harshly because you understand what it feels like to stumble, to struggle, to fall short. You stop holding yourself to impossible standards, and in turn, you stop holding others to them. This is how compassion grows. Compassion for yourself, compassion for others. And compassion is far more powerful than perfection. Compassion heals, connects, and transforms. Perfection isolates, divides, and destroys. When you embrace your humanity, you not only free yourself, you free those around you to be human too. It is tempting to believe that being perfect will make people love you. But the truth is, love that is based on performance is not real love. Real love says, "I see you, flaws and all, and I choose you." Real belonging is not about fitting into a mold of perfection, but about being accepted exactly as you are. And the only way to experience that kind of love and belonging is to let yourself be seen in your humanity. If you hide your flaws, if you pretend to be perfect, you may win approval, but you will never feel truly loved. Because deep down you will know they love the mask, not you. To be loved for who you are, you must be willing to show who you are. That is why perfection will never give you what you are looking for, but humanity always will. The pressure to be perfect is heavy, and it robs you of joy. It keeps you striving, hustling, proving. Always afraid of slipping up, always afraid of being found out. But when you let go of perfection and embrace humanity, you begin to breathe again. You begin to live in freedom. You start to realize that you are not valuable because you never make mistakes. You are valuable because you are here. Alive, growing, learning, loving, connecting. Your worth is not something you have to chase. It is something you already carry inside you. So let go of the idea that you must be flawless to be enough. Let go of the belief that your mistakes disqualify you. Let go of the fear that your imperfections make you unlovable. The truth is the opposite. Your imperfections make you relatable, approachable, human. And your humanity is where your true worth lies. Perfection is a mask that no one can wear forever. Humanity is your true face, and it is more than enough. So when you feel the pressure to prove yourself, to present yourself as flawless, to hide the parts of you that feel messy or unfinished, remember this: your worth is not tied to perfection, it's tied to your humanity. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to fight for it. You simply have to believe it. You are worthy. Not because you are perfect, but because you are human. And that will always be enough. Healing happens when you choose compassion over criticism. These words are easy to say but difficult to live, because most of us have been raised in environments where criticism was the main teacher. From classrooms to workplaces, from family dynamics to our own inner dialogue, we are constantly evaluated, measured, compared, and told where we fall short. We learn that progress comes through being hard on ourselves, that we must constantly push, correct, and punish in order to become better. But here's the truth: criticism may bring temporary compliance, but it does not create lasting transformation. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of shame, fear, and self-doubt. Compassion, on the other hand, is what opens the door to real healing, because it comes from love, not fear. Compassion does not mean avoiding accountability or ignoring mistakes. It means looking at your pain, your flaws, and your struggles with kindness instead of cruelty, and choosing to nurture growth instead of attacking yourself into submission. Think about the way you would treat a child who is learning something new. If a child stumbles while taking their first steps, you don't yell at them. "What's wrong with you? Why can't you do this right?" You cheer them on. You encourage them to try again. You celebrate every attempt, every wobble, every small victory. You believe in them even before they believe in themselves. And that is how they learn to walk. Through love and encouragement, not through harshness and fear. Yet as adults, we forget this lesson. When we stumble, we attack ourselves with criticism. We call ourselves failures, disappointments, hopeless cases. We think that being harsh will make us stronger, but in truth, it only makes us weaker. It breaks our spirit instead of building our strength. Healing happens when we return to that same kind of gentle encouragement we would offer a child. Healing happens when we choose compassion instead of criticism for ourselves. When you are compassionate with yourself, you acknowledge your pain instead of denying it. You say, "Yes, this hurts. Yes, I am struggling." And that's okay, because struggle is part of being human. Compassion gives you permission to feel what you feel without shame. Criticism tells you that you are wrong for hurting, that you should be stronger, tougher, better. Compassion tells you that you are already enough, even in your brokenness. And that belief creates space for healing to begin. Wounds do not close in environments of judgment. They close in environments of safety. Compassion creates that safety. It allows you to be vulnerable enough to face your pain and tender enough to let it mend. Criticism keeps you stuck in the past, replaying every mistake, every flaw, every misstep as proof of your inadequacy. It chains you to regret and fills your heart with shame. But compassion frees you to move forward. It says, "Yes, I made mistakes, but I am not my mistakes. I am learning, I am growing. I am still worthy." Compassion does not erase accountability. It strengthens it. Because when you believe you are worthy of healing, you are more willing to do the work of growth. Criticism makes you want to give up because you feel like you'll never be enough. Compassion inspires you to keep going because you believe you are worth the effort. We often fear compassion because we confuse it with weakness. We think that if we are kind to ourselves, we will become lazy, complacent, or irresponsible. But the opposite is true. Compassion is not an excuse to stay the same. It is the fuel for change. When you are compassionate with yourself, you create a safe foundation where growth can happen. You stop wasting energy fighting shame and instead channel that energy into becoming who you were meant to be. Think about the people who have brought out the best in you in your life. Were they the ones who constantly criticized you? Or were they the ones who believed in you, encouraged you, and reminded you of your worth? Compassion calls us higher because it reminds us of what we're capable of, not because it punishes us for what we're not. Healing through compassion also transforms your relationships. When you stop criticizing yourself so harshly, you naturally become less critical of others. You stop projecting your own shame onto the people around you. You become gentler, more patient, more understanding. Compassion within yourself spills outward and creates compassion for others. And in that compassion, connections deepen. Trust grows. Love flourishes. Criticism isolates. Compassion unites. Criticism builds walls. Compassion builds bridges. That is why compassion is not only healing for you, but for everyone your life touches. Compassion requires courage. It requires you to look at the parts of yourself you've judged most harshly and extend kindness to them. It asks you to embrace your own humanity instead of running from it. It challenges you to rewrite the narrative in your head, the one that says, "I'll never be enough," or "I don't deserve healing," and replace it with, "I am worthy even now. I am allowed to grow at my own pace. I am deserving of patience, forgiveness, and love." This is not easy. It goes against years of conditioning. But the moment you begin practicing compassion with yourself, you will notice a shift. You will feel lighter. You will feel safer inside your own skin. And that is where true healing begins. Criticism will always tempt you because it feels familiar. It feels like control. But every time you choose compassion instead, you break the cycle. You teach yourself that you are not your worst thoughts, not your harshest self-judgments, not your most painful mistakes. You teach yourself that you are human, and being human is enough. Healing comes when you stop trying to fix yourself as if you were broken beyond repair and start nurturing yourself as someone who is worthy of care. You are not broken, you are becoming. And compassion is the light that guides you along that journey. So the next time you stumble, instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" try saying, "I am learning." And that is enough. The next time you fall short, instead of thinking, "I'll never get it right," try reminding yourself, "I am growing, and growth takes time." The next time you feel shame rise up, instead of attacking yourself, place your hand over your heart and whisper, "I am still worthy." These small acts of compassion may feel insignificant, but they are powerful. They are the daily choices that create the environment where healing can take root. You do not heal by becoming harder on yourself. You heal by becoming kinder. You do not grow by shaming yourself into submission. You grow by loving yourself into courage. And the moment you choose compassion over criticism, you step into the kind of healing that criticism could never give you. Healing that restores, heals that uplifts, heals that allows you to breathe and belong in your own skin. Healing that reminds you, at every step, that you are enough. So remember this: the voice of criticism may be loud, but compassion is stronger. Choose compassion. Choose love. Choose kindness for yourself. And watch as your wounds begin to close, your heart begins to soften, and your life begins to heal. Because healing truly happens when you choose compassion over criticism.